You don't have to hold today for one more minute. Whatever it asked of you, the meetings, the messages, the small performances of being fine, none of it needs to follow you any further than the edge of this bed. Let it end here, at the door of the room, in the dark. Feel where your body meets the mattress, the weight of your head sinking into the pillow, your shoulders slowly forgetting the shape they held all day. Nobody is asking anything of you right now. Nothing here requires a version of you that performs, explains, or proves anything to anyone. There is no audience in this room. Only you and the dark and the slow settling of a body finally allowed to stop. Take one slow breath in. Let it fill you further than you expected, and let it go, longer than feels natural, the way a held door finally swings shut on its own. However today felt, busy, flat, disappointing, fine, it is finished now. It already happened. There is nothing left to do with it, except set it down. Tonight, we are going to sit with something quiet, something many people carry without ever saying it out loud, even to the people closest to them. It has very little to do with how many people surround you, and everything to do with the feeling that can arrive in a full house, in a marriage, in a room of old friends, in the middle of a crowded table. You are going to hear, before this session ends, exactly why that feeling shows up, and why it has never meant what your tiredness has been telling you it means. For now, there is nothing to figure out. Just this bed, just this breath, just the quiet, gradual work of arriving here, fully, for the first time all day. Most people believe loneliness is a headcount, that if enough people are in the room, in the group chat, in the house, the ache has no right to show up. So when it shows up anyway, at a dinner table full of family, in a marriage of 15 years, in the middle of a party where you know almost everyone, it feels like proof of something wrong, proof that you are somehow failing to be loved, even in the presence of people who, on paper, love you. That belief is almost completely backwards. Loneliness was never a headcount. It is not a measurement of how many people are near your body. It is a measurement of a much narrower, much more specific thing. How much of your actual, current, unfiltered self is being met by another actual, current person, right now, tonight. You can be surrounded by 100 people and still be lonely, if not one of them knows what is really happening behind your eyes. And you can be entirely alone in a room and not lonely at all, if you know with total certainty that somewhere carries an accurate map of who you actually are. This is why loneliness so often ambushes people in the middle of a full life. Not despite the fullness, because of it. Full lives are loud. Full lives are efficient at scheduling contact and terrible at scheduling truth. You can fill a calendar with other people's names and still not say one true sentence to them for months. Picture a man at his own dinner table. His wife is across from him. His 2 teenage children are beside him, one on a phone, one recounting something that happened at school. There is noise, laughter, the particular warmth of a house that is, by every visible measure, not empty. And yet, somewhere around the second course, he goes quiet in a way no one at the table notices, because his quiet has become so familiar, it no longer registers as anything unusual. He is thinking about a conversation he had with his manager that afternoon, the one where he was told, gently but unmistakably, that his role would not exist in 6 months. He has not said this to his wife. He has not said it to anyone. Not because he does not trust them, he does, but because the moment felt too large to introduce into an evening that was already otherwise fine. So he passes the bread. He asks his daughter a question about her day. And he goes to bed that night, having spent 4 hours surrounded by the people he loves most, having been, for every one of those hours, completely alone with the only thing that actually mattered to him that day. That is the real mechanism. Loneliness is not the distance between you and other bodies. It is the distance between the self you are actually living inside tonight and the self that anyone else currently has access to. The second thing most people get backwards. They assume solitude and loneliness are the same experience wearing different names, that being alone causes loneliness, so the fix must be less time alone. But some of the least lonely people spend enormous amounts of time by themselves, and some of the loneliest people are almost never alone. Consider a woman who moved to a new city 3 years ago for a job that, on paper, worked out exactly as planned. She has colleagues who wave in the hallway, a running group on Saturday mornings, a group chat with 4 other women that pings constantly with memes, restaurant recommendations, weekend plans. By any visible measure, she has a life. But she has noticed something about that group chat. She has sent hundreds of messages in it, and not one of them has ever contained the sentence, "I am scared," or "I don't know if I made the right choice moving here," or "Some nights I sit on my kitchen floor and cry for reasons I can't fully name." She has become extremely good at being present in that chat, and almost completely invisible inside it. She is not isolated. She is surrounded, and she is, most nights, lonelier than she has ever been in her life, because being surrounded without being known is its own particular kind of ache, arguably a sharper one, because it comes with an audience to remind her of the gap. So, if loneliness is not about headcount and not about time alone, what is it actually measuring? It is measuring a gap, specifically the gap between the connection you are receiving and the connection you actually need in this exact season of your life. That gap can open for 100 different reasons. A move, a loss, a promotion nobody around you understands, a new stage of parenting no one nearby has been through, a private fear that doesn't fit into the small talk available to you. The reasons vary. The mechanism does not. Loneliness is not a verdict on your worth. It is a signal, doing exactly what a signal is designed to do, telling you, accurately, that there is a mismatch between what you have and what you need, so that you might eventually go looking for the second thing. This reframe matters more than it might sound like lying here in the dark, because most people don't just feel lonely, they feel ashamed of feeling lonely, as if the ache itself is evidence that they have failed at something basic that everyone else seems to have figured out. They look at the lit windows of other people's lives, the photographs, the parties, the easy laughter in someone else's group chat, and they assume those windows tell the truth about what's happening inside. They rarely do. Almost everyone you have ever envied for how connected they seemed has sat at some point in the exact seat you are in right now, wondering if they were the only one who felt this. They were not. Neither are you. There is a version of this idea that sounds almost too simple to hold much weight, and yet it changes nearly everything once it settles. Loneliness is not proof that no one loves you. It is proof that you were built to need more than being tolerated. You were never designed to survive on proximity alone. You were designed, quietly, stubbornly from a very young age, to need to be known, not liked, not needed for a role. Quand. And when that specific hunger goes unfed long enough, it does not announce itself politely. It shows up at dinner tables. It shows up in marriages. It shows up in the middle of parties, exactly the way it might be showing up in you right now, at the end of a day that, from the outside, probably looked completely fine. Notice, too, the specific word being used here. Not liked, known. These are not the same currency, and mistaking one for the other is part of how so many people end up lonely while surrounded by affection. It is entirely possible to be well-liked, invited everywhere, spoken of warmly by nearly everyone who knows you, and still be almost completely unknown, because liking travels on the surface a person shows, while knowing requires the much rarer act of someone actually looking underneath it and being permitted to. You can collect an enormous amount of the first currency and still feel, most nights, entirely broke in the second. What we're going to do for the rest of tonight is not solve this. There is no single sentence that closes a gap this old, and this session isn't interested in pretending otherwise. What we are going to do instead is slow this feeling down enough that you can finally look at it without flinching, see it clearly for what it actually is, rather than for what your tiredness has been telling you it means. Because once you see loneliness as a signal instead of a sentence, something in the chest starts to loosen almost immediately. Not because the ache disappears, because you stop being afraid of what it supposedly proves about you. You are not behind. You are not unlovable. You are not the only person awake right now feeling the exact shape of this. You are a person whose need to be known has gone quiet for a while, and quiet needs have a way of getting loud right around this hour, when the room is dark and there is nothing left to distract you from them. This gap does not only open inside long marriages or crowded dinner tables, it opens just as often in the exact moment a life changes shape. Consider a young man who moved 3 states away for his first real job 8 months ago. Every Sunday, without fail, he calls his parents. He tells them work is good. He tells them he's made a few friends at the office. He tells them most weeks that everything is fine, because that is the truthful-sounding version of the call, the one that lets everyone hang up feeling settled. What he does not tell them is that most weeknights he eats dinner standing at his kitchen counter, alone, scrolling past photographs of people who seem to have figured out, effortlessly, the exact thing he is quietly struggling with. He does not tell them about the Tuesday 2 months ago when his chest tightened so badly in his apartment that he genuinely wondered for a few minutes if something was wrong with his heart, and how he sat on the bathroom floor afterward, phone in hand, and called no one, because he could not think of a single person he could say this to without also having to explain, reassure, and manage their reaction. His parents believe, quite reasonably, that a son who calls every Sunday and says he's doing fine is not a lonely son. He is one of the loneliest people either of them will speak to that week. Notice what these 3 scenes share: the dinner table, the group chat, the Sunday phone call. In every one of them, contact was happening. Words were being exchanged faithfully, on schedule. What was missing in every single case was not frequency, it was accuracy. The people around them were receiving an edited report, not a person. And loneliness, it turns out, does not respond to how often you show up. It responds to how truthfully you show up, once you do. Here is a line worth holding on to, because it reorganizes almost everything else in this session. The people who feel loneliest are often not the ones with the fewest people around them. They are the ones who have gotten the best at hiding. Hiding, understand, is not usually deceit. It rarely comes from a wish to lie to the people you love. It comes from a much gentler, much more human fear that the true, current, unfiltered version of you might be too much, too messy, too far from the version everyone has grown used to. So the edited version keeps getting sent, week after week, dinner after dinner, until editing has quietly become the only voice anyone nearby has ever heard. There is one more piece of the mechanism worth naming before we move deeper, because it explains why this gap so often widens quietly, without a single dramatic event marking its growth. Modern life is extremely good at offering a substitute that feels almost like the real thing, without actually closing the gap at all. A notification arrives, a message lands, someone reacts to something you posted. Each of these produces a small, genuine flicker of the same reward the body was built to feel from real contact, which is precisely why they are so easy to mistake for enough. But a reaction is not a witness. A notification does not know what happened to you today. It is possible to receive dozens of small digital signals of being seen, hour after hour, and still end most days having gone unwitnessed by a single person who actually knows your circumstances. The gap does not announce itself in a moment like this, because the noise of near contact is loud enough to drown out the quiet of its absence, at least until the room goes dark and the noise finally stops. That is usually when the true size of the gap becomes audible again, which is one reason this particular hour, lying here now, tends to be when it is loudest. None of this is a verdict against you or against anyone who has built a life this way. It is simply the honest shape of how the gap tends to grow, so that when you notice it tonight, you can recognize it as ordinary and explainable, rather than as a private failure unique to you. Stay with that for a moment. Let it be true without needing to fix anything about it tonight. There is an image worth sitting with for a while. Houses at night, seen from a hill or a passing train or the top floor of a parking garage. Dozens of small lit windows, glowing gold against the dark. From that distance, every one of them looks the same. Warm, occupied, complete. You cannot see, from out there, which window belongs to a house where two people are laughing over dinner, and which belongs to a house where someone is sitting alone at the table, phone face down, wondering if anyone will call before the night is over. The light looks identical either way. That is the first thing to understand about this feeling. It is nearly invisible from the outside, and it is very good at looking from a hill or a train or a photograph exactly like everyone else's lit window. This is why comparison is such a dishonest measuring tool here. You are not comparing your inside to their inside. You are comparing your inside, the one place you have unlimited access to their outside, the lit window, the photograph, the laugh in the hallway. Almost no one is posting the 10 p.m. silence. Almost no one mentions the group chat they've gone quiet in for 3 weeks, or the argument they didn't have the energy to start, or the friend they've been meaning to call back since spring. You are the only person in your life with full access to your own dark rooms, which means, mathematically, you will always feel like the exception, the one person whose lit window is hiding something the others aren't. You are not the exception. You are only the one person who can see behind your own glass. Let's look at this from a different angle now. The shape this feeling takes depending on where it finds you. There's the loneliness of not being known, which we have already named. The ache of being surrounded by people who love a version of you that is slightly out of date or slightly incomplete, because you have not yet handed them the current one. There is a second kind, quieter and often more disguised, the loneliness of performing a role so well that no one thinks to ask what's underneath it. Picture a man in his 50s who has played golf with the same 3 friends nearly every Saturday for 11 years. He is, by unanimous agreement among them, the fun one, the one who tells the story that gets the whole group laughing on the 9th hole. The one who remembers everyone's birthday, who organizes the annual trip, who always seems somehow completely fine. A few months ago, his company began a quiet round of layoffs that has not yet reached his department, but everyone can feel it coming the way you feel weather changing in your knees. He has not told his 3 friends this, not because they wouldn't care. They would drop everything for him, and some distant part of him even knows that. He hasn't told them because in 11 years of Saturdays, he has never once been the one who needed something. He built the role of the fun one so carefully, so reliably, that there is no longer an opening in it for the sentence, "I'm frightened." So he tells the story on the 9th hole. He laughs the loudest, and he drives home afterwards in a silence that has nothing to do with how good the round was. This is the particular cruelty of a role well played. The better you become at being fine for other people, the harder it becomes to ever stop, even for one Saturday, even with people who have loved you for over a decade. This feeling does not only live in empty rooms, it lives quite comfortably inside a laugh that has been performed one time too many. There is a shape that grows quietly inside relationships that never got updated. A father and his adult son go fishing together twice a year, the way they have since the son was 10 years old. They talk about the fish. They talk about the drive up. They talk sometimes about a game one of them watched last week. Both of them, if you asked separately, would tell you they love this tradition, and they do. But somewhere in the last 15 years, the son went through a divorce, changed careers twice, and spent an entire winter that he has never mentioned to his father, wondering whether he had wasted his 20s. The father, for his part, has never told his son about the diagnosis he received last spring, the one he is still deciding how to say out loud. They have a relationship built carefully and lovingly out of the only language they ever learnt to speak together: fish, weather, scores, and neither of them knows how to introduce a different one without it feeling like an intrusion into something that has otherwise worked for 30 years. So they keep talking about the fish. 2 people who would do almost anything for each other, sitting 6 feet apart in a boat, each privately carrying something the other one would want desperately to know, and neither one certain how to hand it over, in a relationship built entirely from an older, smaller version of who they both used to be. This is worth naming plainly. Love is not always the missing ingredient in these situations. Often it is present in full. What is missing is an updated script, permission for the relationship to grow into the size the people inside it have actually become. There was a 4th shape worth naming, one that arrives disguised as a season of unbearable fullness. Picture a woman 3 weeks into motherhood, sitting in a nursery chair at 3 in the morning, a baby finally asleep on her chest, her husband asleep down the hall because one of them has to be functional for work in a few hours. The house has never had more life in it, and she has never felt more unreachable in her own body. The friends who used to text her constantly have mostly gone quiet, not from unkindness, but because they are still living in a version of life she no longer has access to, and neither side quite knows how to bridge the distance yet. Her own mother calls daily, delighted, full of advice, and she loves her mother, and still cannot find the words to explain the specific, wordless fear she is sitting with at 3 in the morning. The fear that she is somehow doing this wrong in ways no one has warned her about. She is, in that chair, entirely necessary to another human being, and almost completely unseen by every adult who loves her. This is a season nobody tells you can be this lonely, precisely because it looks from every lit window on the street like the fullest room in the house. There is a third shape this takes, and this one arrives less like a slow leak and more like a door closing, the kind that follows loss. A woman in her 70s still sets 2 cups down most mornings before she remembers. Her husband has been gone for a year and 4 months. In the beginning, people came. The house was, for a few weeks, almost too full. Casseroles, phone calls, her sister staying over for a month. But grief does not follow other people's calendars. It does not politely finish on the schedule everyone else assumes it will. Somewhere around month 4, the calls became weekly. By month 8, monthly. Not out of anyone's failure to love her, simply because the world keeps moving, and other people's lives keep asking things of them, and casseroles are not something anyone can sustain forever. What she is left with, most nights now, is a kitchen built for 2 people, occupied by 1, and a chair across the table that she has never once considered moving, though she has, more than once, considered simply not setting the 2nd place, and each time she stops herself, because doing it would mean admitting, in a way the empty chair alone does not yet require her to admit, that this is simply how the house is now. One evening, roughly a year in, she caught herself reaching for the 2nd mug before she had even opened her eyes all the way. Pure muscle memory, 40 years deep, and by the time she noticed what she was doing, it was already in her hand. She stood there in the kitchen a long moment, holding a mug meant for a man who would never again ask her how she'd slept, and put it back on the shelf. Neither of them ever knew, because there was no one left to know it with, that this was the morning she quietly stopped expecting to hear his voice ask that question again. That is the shape grief takes most often, not one dramatic moment, but a long series of small, private retirings, habits that used to be shared, quietly reassigned to one person alone, one at a time, until the whole architecture of a life has shifted without a single ceremony marking it. If you are lying here tonight carrying some version of that, a person who is gone, a friendship that faded without a fight, a family that used to gather and now mostly doesn't, you are allowed to feel the full weight of that loss without needing to have made peace with it yet. Peace is not a deadline. It arrives when it arrives, on its own unhurried schedule. Tonight is not asking you to be finished with any of it. 4 different shapes now, sitting side by side. The role played so well no one thinks to ask what's underneath it. The loss that quietly reassigns shared habits to one person alone. The relationship stuck speaking an older, smaller language than the people inside it have grown into, and the fullness of a new life stage that somehow leaves you less reachable than before. 4 different doors, the same draft of cold air coming through underneath every one of them. It is worth noting that in not one of these scenes was anyone unloved. The golfer is loved by his 3 friends. The widow was loved deeply for 40 years. The father and son in the boat love each other without hesitation. What was missing in every case was never love. It was accurate, current contact, the kind that requires someone to go first, to say the harder sentence, to update the old script. That is the quiet thread running underneath everything in this session so far. It might help, in the middle of all of this, to understand where the feeling itself comes from, not the specific ache tonight, but the underlying wiring beneath it. Because this is not a modern invention, and it is not a personal weakness. It is one of the oldest alarm systems the body owns. Thousands of years ago, being physically separated from your group was not an inconvenience. It was a survival emergency. A person cut off from the tribe faced predators, exposure, and hunger with no one to share the burden of watching, hunting, or healing. So the body developed an alarm for social separation every bit as sharp as the one it developed for hunger or pain. A signal designed to make disconnection feel urgent enough that a person would do almost anything to resolve it. That alarm still exists in you, fully wired, even though the modern version of disconnection rarely involves predators. It fires just as loudly over a quiet group chat, an empty side of the bed, or a dinner table where no one asked a real question, because your nervous system has not been updated to know the difference between ancient danger and modern quiet. It is worth noting, too, that this exact alarm is often loudest at exactly this hour, the one you are in right now. During the day, there is enough noise and motion to keep the signal quiet, tasks to finish, people to see, screens to answer. At night, once the noise finally stops and the body is still, the alarm that has been waiting patiently under all that motion gets its first real chance to be heard. This is part of why so many people report their loneliest, most restless thoughts arriving right as their head hits the pillow, not because the day was worse than usual, but because the day was simply louder than the feeling. And only now, in the quiet, does the feeling get a turn to speak. Understanding this can be its own small relief. The ache arriving now is not a sign that tonight is uniquely bad. It is only the sound of an old alarm finally getting a quiet enough room to be heard in. This is worth knowing simply because it removes a layer of shame from the experience. You are not broken for feeling this sharply. You are running an alarm system that has kept human beings alive for tens of thousands of years, and it is doing tonight exactly what it was built to do, telling you insistently that something about your current supply of closeness does not match what you actually need. The alarm is not the enemy. It is closer to a smoke detector than a verdict, loud, uncomfortable, occasionally going off at 3 in the morning for reasons that feel disproportionate, but never, not once, a comment on whether you deserve to be loved. Here is the reframe worth carrying past tonight. The goal was never to make the alarm stop by convincing yourself you don't need anyone. Some version of this culture tries to sell independence as the cure for this feeling. The idea that if you just needed people less, you would hurt less. That is not resilience. That is quiet self-abandonment dressed up as strength. The actual answer was never needing less. It was letting yourself be known by someone, in some way, in a size that fits the moment you are in. There is a man raising 2 children alone since his divorce 4 years ago, who has built an entire identity around never asking for help. He packs the lunches. He drives to every practice. He has never once in 4 years let a friend see him struggle with any of it, because somewhere early on he decided that needing help would confirm the thing he was most afraid people already suspected, that he could not actually hold this together. Around month 2 of that arrangement, an old friend offered to take the kids for an evening so he could rest. He said he was fine. He has said he was fine, in one form or another, several hundred times since. 2 nights ago, after both children were finally asleep, he sat on the edge of his bathtub and cried, quietly, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Not because anything new had gone wrong, but because the weight of carrying it entirely alone had simply, finally, become heavier than his pride. Nobody came to check on him. Nobody knew there was anything to check on. He had built that particular silence himself, one polite fine at a time, and it had done exactly what silences like that always do. It had held. And it does not have to be enormous. This might be the part most people get wrong most often. They picture the cure as some large, dramatic act, a deep, hours-long conversation, a total overhaul of a life, a friendship rebuilt from scratch. That is not usually how the gap actually closes. Connection tends to arrive the way warmth arrives in a cold room, not from one enormous blaze, but from a single small lamp, placed close enough to actually reach you. Think about the difference between a spotlight and a lamp. A spotlight is enormous, distant, and impersonal. It can illuminate a whole stage without ever knowing a single thing about the person standing in it. Much of modern connection works like a spotlight, broad, visible, and strangely cold. Hundreds of people can see you post something. None of them are actually near you. A lamp is different. It is small. It only reaches a few feet. But it is warm, and it is close, and it was placed there by someone who wanted that particular corner of the room to not be dark. One honest sentence to one person who actually listens does more for this ache than 1,000 people seeing the version of you built for public consumption. You do not need a spotlight tonight. You need one lamp placed close. There is an old, simple image that fits well here. A path through tall grass does not stay a path on its own. It stays a path because someone keeps walking it, again and again, wearing it down a little more each time, until the ground remembers the shape of their steps. Stop walking it for a season, and the grass grows back over it, as though it was never there. Not out of malice, simply because that is what grass does when it is left alone. Closeness with another person works the same way. It is not maintained by the one enormous conversation you keep meaning to have. It is maintained by small, ordinary contact, repeated often enough that the ground between you never quite has time to grow back over. This is, in the end, forgiving news. It means the friendship you have let grow quiet does not require a dramatic reunion to restore it. It only requires walking the path again, plainly, a little at a time, before the grass finishes closing over it completely. There is one more thing worth saying plainly, because it is easy to let it pass by unspoken. Someone you love right now may be waiting for the exact honesty you have been withholding from them, the way you have been waiting for it from someone else. The gap runs in both directions. The friend you assume is too busy to want your real news might be lying in a bed like this one tonight, wishing you would just call and say something true. Connection rarely fails because no one wants it. It fails because everyone is waiting for someone else to go first. Two sisters live 20 minutes apart in the same city and have, for the better part of 3 years, seen each other only at holidays. It did not happen through any falling out. There was no argument, no injury either of them could name if you asked. It happened the way most distances happen between people who still genuinely love each other. A cancelled coffee here, a returned text a week late there. Both of them quietly deciding over and over that the other one was probably too busy this month to really want the visit. Each of them, privately, misses the other one specifically, not people in general. That particular sister, that particular laugh, that particular way of being known without having to explain anything first. And each of them assumes, without ever checking, that the silence is coming from the other side. Last Christmas, for about 4 minutes in a kitchen doorway, one of them almost said it out loud. I miss you. Actually miss you. Not just the holidays. And then a nephew ran through asking for something, and the moment folded itself back up and went into a drawer neither of them will open again until next December. This is worth sitting with, because it is rarely dramatic enough to notice while it is happening. Nobody decided to let that closeness fade. It simply required no one deciding to keep it, and grass, left alone, always grows back over a path. There is no instruction here to send a message tonight, half asleep, in the dark. That is not what this hour is for. But it is worth knowing, quietly, for whenever morning finds you, that the smallest possible version of reaching out is very often enough to begin walking a path again. Not a long conversation, not an explanation for the silence. Sometimes only 5 words, thinking of you today, sent to the one person the gap has grown the widest with. Most reconnections do not begin with a resolution. They begin with someone deciding to go first. in the smallest way available to them. Somewhere, tonight, and this is worth letting settle for a moment, there is a person doing exactly what you are doing right now, lying in the dark, feeling the specific private ache of not being fully known by anyone nearby, wondering if they are the only one who feels this deeply, this often, this late at night, when there is nothing left to distract them from it. They are not the only one. You are not the only one. In fact, at this exact hour, in this exact posture, still, quiet, eyes closed, mind circling the same unspoken thing, there are people in nearly every time zone on Earth doing precisely this. An entire invisible fellowship of people who are tonight aching to be known, most of whom will never meet each other, all of them convinced, in the particular loneliness of the hour, that they are the only one. There is something strange and almost tender in that. The very feeling that convinces you that you are alone in it is one of the most universally shared human experiences there is. You are, in this ache, joined by nearly everyone who has ever lived long enough to love someone and risk losing them. One day, the friend you have been meaning to call back will simply stop expecting the call. Neither of you will mark the day it happened. Let that sit for a moment, not to frighten you, only so that tonight, of all nights, you can feel how much this actually matters underneath the tiredness, underneath the years of small delays. It does not have to be that friend. It does not have to be tonight, or tomorrow, or any specific day you can name right now. But somewhere in your life, there is a version of that sentence quietly counting down, a relationship still close enough to save, not yet cold enough to have stopped expecting anything from you. That is not a demand. It is simply true, the way weather is true, whether or not you look up at the sky tonight to notice it. Picture yourself years from now, not tonight, not this month, but far enough ahead that this particular season has become a memory instead of a present tense. You are older. Maybe you are standing in a kitchen that does not exist yet, or sitting at a table surrounded by people who, tonight, you have not yet met or have not yet grown close enough to. Someone near you says something ordinary, asks how you slept, notices you are quiet, asks what's wrong before you've said a word, and you feel, for a moment, the particular relief of being read correctly by someone who was paying attention. In that future moment, some part of you may remember a night like this one, lying in the dark, certain that no one would ever fully see you, certain that the ache was permanent, and you will feel something close to tenderness for that version of yourself. Not embarrassment, not judgment, just a quiet wish you could reach back and tell that version of you that the gap does close, gradually, almost always in ways too small to notice while they're happening. You could not have seen that future from here, but it is, more often than tonight allows you to believe, already on its way toward you. Think for a moment of every person you have ever met who turned out, once you finally got close enough, to be carrying something similar. The colleague who seemed to have it all arranged, who mentioned once, almost in passing, a marriage that had quietly ended 2 years earlier, that nobody at work had known about. The neighbor who always waved, always seemed content, who you later learned had sat with the exact same 3 a.m. ache you are sitting with now, most nights for the better part of a decade. You did not know because they too had a lit window. And somewhere, someone does not know this about you either, and is, at this very moment, slightly envious of how settled your life appears from the outside. This is not a reason for despair. It is closer to the opposite. It means the ache is not a private defect unique to your particular life. It means you belong, whether you feel it yet or not, to the enormous, quiet population of people who are simply waiting for someone to go first. You do not have to be that person tonight. You only have to know, lying here, that the waiting is shared. None of this requires anything from you tonight. You do not need to call anyone, fix anything, or decide who your next lamp will be. Tonight is only for seeing the shape of the thing, clearly enough to stop being afraid of it. The alarm can keep ringing softly in the background. You do not have to answer it at this hour. You are allowed to simply notice it, name it, and let it be quieter than it was an hour ago. Let your shoulders drop another inch into the bed. There is nowhere else you need to be seen tonight, except here, by yourself, exactly as you are. That is enough witnessing for one night. The ache can rest now, too. It has done its job. It got your attention. It does not need to keep working while you sleep. Let it go quiet, the way a smoke alarm goes quiet once the room has been checked and found, finally, to be safe. Your breathing has probably already slowed since we began. Let it slow further. There is nothing left to solve before sleep. Only this, the knowledge, settling in now, that the ache you carry tonight has never been proof that you are unlovable. It has only ever been proof that you were built for closeness, and that closeness has, for a while, been harder to reach than it should be. That will not always be true. Let the room hold you the way it's meant to. Let the dark be simple again, not empty, just quiet. Somewhere, someone is exactly where you are, and that, too, is a kind of company. Let this be the last thing your mind does tonight. Not thinking, not solving, just resting. You are not alone tonight. Somewhere, someone is breathing this same slow breath. You do not have to perform connection to deserve it. You are allowed to be quiet and still be loved. Being fully known can wait until morning. You have not failed at closeness. You are only tired. The people you matter to you are still yours, even in sleep. You do not have to carry this ache any further tonight. It is safe to stop watching for it now. Nobody is grading how connected you seem tonight. You do not owe anyone an easier version of yourself. The real you is enough to be reached for. You do not have to earn a place in someone's life. You already have one, even on the quiet days. The gap you carry is not permanent. It only feels that way at midnight. Morning has a way of making distance feel smaller. Someone is going to be glad tomorrow that you reached out. You do not have to know who yet. You are not the only one lying awake with this feeling. Somewhere, a stranger is feeling exactly what you are feeling. That stranger is not alone either. Neither are you. You do not have to solve the distance tonight. Distance is not the same as being forgotten. You are remembered, even in the silence. Rest now. The reaching out can wait for daylight. Tonight only asks you to breathe and be still. That is enough. You are enough, exactly as you are. You do not have to be strong for anyone tonight. Let something else hold that weight until morning. The dark is not empty. It is only quiet. Quiet is not the same thing as alone. You are still connected to everyone who has ever loved you. Sleep does not undo that. It only rests it. Tomorrow the world will still have people in it who care. You will not have to find them from nothing. They are already there, waiting on their own quiet paths. You do not have to reach every one of them tonight. One lamp, one path, one honest sentence will be enough. Not tonight, though. Tonight there is nothing to reach for. Only this bed, only this breath, only this quiet. Let your eyelids grow heavy without resisting it. Let your thoughts slow like footsteps on a quiet street. There is no one left to convince of anything tonight. Just you and the dark and the slow rise of your chest. That is enough company for one night. You have done enough today. You are allowed to stop. Whatever waited for you today can keep waiting until morning. Nothing is going anywhere while you sleep. The people who matter will still be there tomorrow. So will you, a little more rested, a little less alone. Tomorrow does not need an answer yet. You are allowed to simply be held by this quiet. Let your hands unclench. Let your jaw soften. There is nothing left to prove to the dark. Someone, somewhere, still thinks of you more than you know. You have not been forgotten. You have only been quiet. That is allowed. That has always been allowed. You will not have to hide the true you much longer. One lamp is enough. You do not need a spotlight. The path is still there, even under the grass. It can be walked again, slowly, whenever you are ready. Not tonight. Tonight is only for resting. You have carried enough for one day. Let someone else carry things, just for tonight. You are held. even in the quiet, even in the dark. Sleep is not disappearing. It is arriving somewhere safe. The lamp can stay unlit tonight. You are loved anyway. Let go now. There is nothing left to hold. Picture the room around you fading gently at the edges, the way a lit window dims when the last lamp inside it is finally switched off for the night. Not gone, just resting. Somewhere close, someone else's light is dimming too, at the exact same slow pace as yours, in a room you will never see, in a life connected to yours in ways neither of you will ever need to prove. Picture, if it helps, every window on your street doing the same thing right now, one by one, softening into the dark, not because the people inside them have vanished, but because rest has finally come for them too. You are one small window among many, all of you unseen by each other, and still, somehow, part of the same quiet street. Further out, past your street, past your city, whole countries are doing this same thing right now, in their own time zones, their own languages, their own particular version of this exact ache. Someone somewhere is being folded into sleep at this very moment, carrying a version of tonight's feeling they have never once said aloud to another person. You will never meet them. And still, in this one specific way, lying still, breathing slow, letting the day finally end, you are doing the exact same thing at the exact same time as someone else. That is not nothing. That is, in its own quiet way, a kind of company that asks nothing of you and gives you everything it has. Let your breath join that same slow rhythm now. In, gently. Out, longer. Again. There is nowhere left to be tonight, except exactly here. Let the room go quieter than it has been all day. Let your mind go quieter than the room. Let the dark hold both of you gently, unseen, unalone. You are not alone tonight. You were never as alone as it felt. Rest now. Morning will find you exactly where you left it. Let go a little more and a little more. You are safe. You are held. You are not alone. Not tonight. Not ever, really. Only quiet for now. Sleep now.